Hello. Hello and welcome to the Hudson Library and Historical Society. My name is Autumn. I am an assistant librarian here. Bef- okay. Before I introduce our guest, I have a few announcements about some upcoming programs that we're going to have. On February 1st at 7 p.m., we have a virtual author program with the former dean of Harvard Law School and professor of law, Martha Minow, who will be discussing her book, Saving the News, Why the Constitution Calls for Government Action to Preserve Freedom of Speech. And on Sunday, February 4th at 2 p.m., the library will be holding a live in-person concert with Wits Folly, which is part of the Hudson Library's Tour of Austria month. You can check out our website for more details on how to register for these events and more. A very special thank you to the Learned Owl Bookshop for being here. You can get a copy of Mr. Taylor's Dead Man's Hand through them, which you can get signed after our program. Also, please stick around until the end of our program because we do have a giveaway tonight. So tonight's guest is Mr. Brad Taylor. Mr. Taylor graduated from the University of Texas and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Infantry. He served for more than 21 years, retiring as a Special Forces lieutenant colonel. During that time, he held numerous infantry and special forces positions, including 8 years in 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, where he commanded multiple troops and a squadron. He has conducted operations in support of U.S. national interest in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other classified locations. He holds a Master's of Science in Defense Analysis from the Naval Postgraduate School with a concentration in irregular warfare. In 2011, Mr. Taylor published his debut novel, One Rough Man, which was an immediate success and launched the Pike Logan series. Now with more than 18 installments and nearly 4 million copies sold, the series has consistently hit the New York Times bestseller list. When not writing, he serves as a security consultant on asymmetrical threats for various agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brad Taylor.
Thank you. I'll get up here so you can see me. My wife just told me, get on the stage, get on the stage. So I have to listen to everything she says. Usually I pace about, so I might fall off of it. What I'm going to do is talk about 25 to 30 minutes on writing this specific book, and then I'll open the floor up to questions, which is a lot more fun than just listening to me babble. So if you have any questions about anything, whatever you want to ask me, I'll answer. And it'll sound smart, so you'll think I'm giving you the right answer. So whatever answer I give you, it's going to be the right one if I say it. This book came out, I usually don't write about current events, mainly because they're current. And anything could happen as you're writing the book, because it takes about a year from flash to bang for the book to come out. And if you're writing about stuff that's going on right now, something can go wrong, and your book is just doomed. There's nothing you can do about it. But I was doing research on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, not because I was writing a novel, but because I still do security consulting, and I still look at that kind of thing. And one of the big fears we have is, are we going to cross the red line with Russia, and we're going to go to nuclear war? They're going to launch missiles at us, and everybody's all petrified about that. Elon Musk is really terrified of it. He's always tweeting about it. And so I started doing research on that. And I ran across this system called the perimeter system that the Russians have. And it's an old system. It's been around since the 80s. It was done when the Soviet Union was around. And it was in response to our SDI initiative. If you remember Reagan's Star Wars, the Strategic Defense Initiative, he came out and said, we're going to put this stuff in space and we can knock every missile that comes into our atmosphere, we'll be able to knock it out of the air. That's what we're doing. Star Wars is a go. Well, that obviously never went to fruition. We were still trying to do that. But it scared the heck out of Russia, because at the time, the doctrine for deterrence was MAD, mutually assured destruction. Neither Russia, the Soviet Union, and America are not going to fight each other because it's a zero-sum game. Nobody's going to win. Whoever starts it, you're both going to die. Well, Russia looked at that and said, if they think they can knock every missile out of the air, it will encourage them to do a first strike because there's no repercussions because they think they can knock it out. It scared Russia. They were thinking the mutually assured destruction doesn't work anymore. Only one side fears it, the other side doesn't. So they came up with a perimeter system, which was the very first. Everybody talks about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. This was it. I mean, it's ground zero artificial intelligence, version 1. And it was called the dead hand in the West. For reasons that'll become obvious. So they actually put these sensors out all over Russia, to all these different nodes that fed into a computer. So they had seismic sensors. If there was earthquakes all over Russia, that would feed in. Sensors on the communication systems. Was the Kremlin still talking to the high command? Is the high command talking to the field commands? All these things came in, fed into a computer. And if all the conditions were met, the computer determined that we've just had a first nuclear strike has hit Russia. And if that happened, all the missiles that remained in Russia launched by the computer. Anything that was still standing was coming. And the basic deterrence was, yeah, you think you can hit us. If you can wipe out the Kremlin, you can wipe out anybody you want to in command and control. But if you do wipe us out, those missiles are coming. And the only way it would be initiated in real world is through an actual nuclear strike. So if there's a ton of seismic activity, but the Kremlin's still talking, the communication's still going, doesn't work. If the Kremlin, for whatever reason, lost comms with all their military commands, but there wasn't any seismic activity, then it didn't work. All these certain things had to line up perfectly to say, we've just been hit with a nuclear first strike, and then the missiles would go. Well, that thing still exists in Russia. I mean, they still have it. I was like, you check the batteries? So working on, 5 1/4 floppy disks in there? How's this thing working? But it was enough of, I had never heard of it when I was in the military. It was enough of a unique thing that I was like, there's a story there. I can make a story out of that. And so I broke my own rule and said, okay, I'll write about this. And what I did was I changed the dead hand, which is a real thing. I changed it to Putin makes it the dead man's hand. And he's worried about, and this is fictionally now in the book, he's worried about somebody trying to overthrow him. He's worried about his own people trying to get rid of him. So he makes what he calls a dead man's hand, which is no longer does it have to be a first strike, it just has to be me. If I fall out a window, if I drink some plutonium-laced tea like he's doing to everybody else, then those missiles are getting launched. And he tells everybody inside Russia that, the oligarchs and everything, to just so they say, you think you're going to get rid of me? That's not going to do any good, because if you do get rid of me, I'm getting rid of Russia, because we're going to nuclear holocaust. And so that was the dead man's hand. And I kind of wanted to do something with counter-leadership targeting, because we always talk about counter-leadership targeting or regime change or whatever you want to call it, as that's the end state. If I get rid of the bad guy, then there's going to be unicorn and rainbows. Everything's going to be great. And there's always second and third order effects that you would better look at before you start on a campaign doing that. A good example is Libya. Gaddafi is a bad guy, no doubt about it. You're not going to find anybody who says Gaddafi's a good guy. He tortured people, all that kind of stuff. He's a despot. So Arab Spring comes up, and we say, we're going to get rid of Gaddafi. That'll be the best thing ever. And we did. And what was the second order effect of that? We got Benghazi, had our ambassador murdered. They burned down the consulate, burned down the CIA annex. Third order effect of that was they looted all the armories that Gaddafi used to have under lock and key. Now terrorists have taken all the weapons, and those weapons went to Niger, where they killed 4 Special Forces soldiers in an ambush, among many other things. But we never thought about, what's the second and third order effect of this? And if you're a rational actor and you're looking at a counter-leadership campaign, you'll usually, and when I say rational actor, I mean you're not Hinckley trying to impress Jodie Foster by shooting somebody. You actually have a goal you're trying to accomplish. And you'll do it for 2 reasons, one of 2 reasons. Number one, you'll do it for dislocation. The person you're targeting has some martial skill, something they can do that you want to remove from the battlefield. So it gives you leverage in the fight. And a good example of that's in World War II. Admiral Yamamoto was the architect of Pearl Harbor, was a naval genius, literally was a naval genius, was kicking our butt all over the place. And we got his flight information intercept, his flight path, his aircraft, the time of flight, and we launched a couple of P-38s up there and blew him out of the air. That was a targeted killing. I know who's on it, I know where he's going, and I'm going to kill him. And we removed basically Japan's queen from the chessboard because he was such a smart guy. In the modern era, 3 years ago this month, we killed General Soleimani from Iran. Now he runs a Quds force. It's all over the news now about this axis of resistance, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Islamic resistance in Iraq, all the militias that are over there. He was the guy that built all that. He was really good at it. He could arm, equip, train, and indoctrinate all those guys. And he did it all over the Middle East, which we're contending with right now. We finally got fed up with it and said, we need to get rid of that guy. If we remove him, they're going to replace him, of course, but the guy they replace him with is not going to be nearly good enough he's not going to be a Soleimani. And that's what we did. And actually, that worked out pretty well. They have not been nearly as effective as they used to be. Still effective enough to give us headaches, but not nearly as effective as they were. But it doesn't have to be military. It doesn't have to be, it just has to be some kind of special skill that you need to get rid of. A good example in Israel, Iran's always trying to make this nuclear bomb. Well, you don't make a nuclear bomb with a high school education. There's only certain people in Iran that have the physical capability and the mental ability to make a bomb. So what does Israel do? I'll just get rid of that guy. I mean, Iran's not going to Walmart and buying a new, physicist to build them a weapon. And they've killed probably 9 of them. Some of them incredibly uniquely. They used a remote-controlled machine gun in the bed of a pickup and killed them from another country, which is pretty impressive. I actually quoted that in the book because I read that story. I was like, you got to be kidding me. The only reason they knew about it was they blew the truck up. So they killed that guy. His wife sitting next to him. They shot him, killed him, didn't kill the driver, didn't kill the wife. And then they blew the truck up. They wanted to destroy everything so that Iran would just go, what happened? But the bomb didn't work. It blew the weapon up, but they still recovered the weapon, so they figured out what happened. But even Israel's not immune to it. So in 1992, Israel was occupying all southern Lebanon. Hezbollah was running around. This is 10 years after they blew our barracks up, so they've been around a while. But they're still just kind of a guerrilla force. They're pinpricking Israel. They're real pain. Israel's sick of that, and they're going to teach them a lesson. They were just a small guerrilla force running around Lebanon, shooting Israelis. So they targeted where the leader was, found out where he was, time and day, and they killed him. And they were like, woo, got rid of the leader of Hezbollah. They're no longer a problem. Well, the guy that took over Hezbollah was Nasrallah, who is still in charge of Hezbollah. And he is 10 times the leader that other guy was. They now own 40% of the Lebanese parliament. They're a political force. They have more rockets than most states. Their people are super well-trained, battle-hardened, and it's all because they killed the idiot and the smart guy took over. So there's always some kind of second and third order effect, and that's what I wanted to write in a book about. So there's a group of partisans from Ukraine who they feel the only way we're going to end this war is to get rid of Putin because it's a stalemate, it's going back and forth, and we need to get rid of him so that they'll pull out of Ukraine, not knowing that the second order effect of this is nuclear Armageddon. So it kind of gives Pike a little bit of Pike Logan is my main character. He gets a little bit of a moral dilemma here. He wants to help the Ukrainians out, but in actuality, he should be protecting Putin to prevent the Ukrainians from getting him because it's going to be a nuclear war. And that's what I was kind of wanting to write about. I did tell my publisher, I said, here's my idea. I'm a genius. Look at this. Here it is. And they of course agreed. I'm a genius. But I said, there's 3 risks on this. There's 3 things that could go wrong before this book comes out because it is current events. I said, number 1, the Ukraine war could be over. Russia could wipe out Ukraine. Ukraine could push out Russia. They could have just to say we're going to have peace, whatever. It could be over. And if that happens, the book's no good. I said there's a low risk of that. I've studied it extensively, and I don't think that's going to happen. And sure enough, it's basically doing exactly what I thought it would do. Number 2, part of the book is about Sweden and Finland trying to join NATO. Sweden and Finland said that we're joined at the hip. It's both of us or none of us. We're joining NATO together. We're not going to separate the two. It's just both of us. And I said that Sweden's having a lot of issues. Turkey's really mad at Sweden. Sweden apparently has a bunch of people that Turkey says are Kurds. They say they're terrorists. And they basically said, you give us these guys back or you're not going into NATO. And Sweden, of course, said, I'm not giving a bunch of people back. They basically have green cards, their version of a green card in Sweden. It's like, I'm not going to just hand this guy over to you to torture just because you say he's bad. You don't have any proof. He's not been in a court of law. He's not broken any laws in Sweden. And so I told my publisher that's going to go on for a while. It's going to be a close run thing as to whether they make it into NATO before the book gets published. Then halfway through writing it, Sweden or Finland said, I don't care about this buddy stuff. We're just going to go it alone. And they joined NATO. So I'm fresh and rewriting. But Sweden was still out there. And so I told them, Sweden's probably not going to make it. Well, my book came out on Tuesday, last Tuesday, midnight. 4 p.m. on Tuesday, they voted him in. So I beat him. So Thursday, just last Thursday, Erdogan said, I'll let him in. They're not in yet, but I beat him to publication. The last one, though, was Putin. So Putin, I said, something happens to him. He has a health event, whatever. If he leaves office, that's the most damaging. I said that's the biggest risk is Putin. but it's the least likely to happen because he's a strong man. He knows how to survive. He's old KGB. He's a smart dude. I don't think he's going out. And I turned the book in, and in June, Wagner and Prigozhin cross the border and drive into Moscow. They're gonna take over Putin. We're gonna get everybody out of here. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They're doing a coup. That didn't work out for Prigozhin, obviously. He, ended up skydiving out of a plane without a parachute. But I was really worried about it. I'm like, first I was like, I hope he really doesn't have the dead man's hand. You guys thought about this? Something could go wrong on this. And the only good thing about that was, for my writing process, was I didn't use Wagner in the book. They would have been a natural choice as the antagonist to do all this stuff with, but I'd use them in 2 other books. They were in Hunter Killer and Daughter of War. I was studying Wagner way before they made the news. I knew about them, years ago. I was using them in books, and so this time I started out saying, I'm not going to use them. I'm sick of using them. They're all over the news now. Everybody knows, and that's just low-hanging fruit. I'm going to find something else. And so I started doing research on Russia, the armed forces, and all that. And it turns out in 2016, Putin created the National Guard, his own National Guard. And it's not like our National Guard. They don't do hurricane relief. It's all about internal security, and he controls them. So every other organization, Spetsnaz unit, GRU, all these other guys still go through the National Security Council, his version of it, still have generals in charge and that kind of stuff. And he wanted something he could put his thumb on. He gets to order. He doesn't have to order through 15 generals. He wants to do it. So he made the National Guard, and each one of the National Guard in every oblast, they have little sectors. They have a Spetsnaz section. They have sober teams. They have all this special operations stuff, and he owns it. And the guy that's in charge of the National Guard used to be the head of Putin's personal security detail. In real world, that's who's in charge of it right now. So he's a real loyalist, and those guys are working together, and these guys are in charge of internal security for Russia. So if you do anything wrong, the National Guard's the one that's going to thump you in the head. And I said, that's what I'm going to use. And I used Putin's name throughout the book. I kept the publisher waiting on him to say, you got to change that name to Blutin. Or Utin. It can't be Putin. They never did. It's like, okay. I just kept typing Putin. It's like, it's Putin. And I actually used the head of the National Guard. He's a real guy. I used his name. That's the guy, my main bad guy. He's going to be the head of the National Guard. And he's a real person. He's in the news. I have his name. And they said, oh, no. You got to change that name. I said, why? Well, that's a real person. We can't have a real, you got to make it a different name. We don't want that in there. And I was like, Putin's real, right? He's real too. They made me change that name. They did not make me change Putin's name. I don't know why. So that's the way I went with it. Well, once I had the plot going and it was time to go do research, I like to get on the ground and see, we used to call sight, sound, smells of the battlefield. Every culture is different. Everything smells different. The cooking's different. The mannerisms are different. Every little culture, I can't figure it out from Google Maps. Some people can. I can't. I got to get on the ground. And I wasn't going to go to Ukraine and get shot at, and I wasn't going to Russia because, like I said, I had written about Wagner and that kind of stuff. I'd be in prison like any other American. I wasn't going to set foot in there. So we decided to go to the Nordic states and the Baltic states. We ended up going to Copenhagen, Sweden, Finland, and Estonia, basically traveling all over the place in there. And there's usually about, what I say is, there's 50% that I'm going to do. I know, I've done the research, and I want to see these things. There's about 50% that's looking for me. I don't know what it is, but it's going to see me, and I'm going to know, I'm going to use that. And so the first place we stopped at in Copenhagen that was about, nothing really jumped out at me. Everything I looked at, it was something I planned on. We went to a place called Christiana, which my wife didn't want to spend any time there. Has anybody been to Christiana? I was surprised the number of people, and every time I do a tour, somebody said, I've been there. I'm like, the hell? So so the Christiana it's a hippie commune. It's an old military base. In the 70s, they evacuated the base. The government just said, we're not going to put soldiers there anymore, and it's just an abandoned base. And these hippies rolled in the 70s, planted a flag. This is a free country of Christiana. We don't belong to anybody. We're our own country. And they refused to leave. And they've been there ever since. And they sell drugs all over the place. They have a pusher street. And, it's just, and they're all like stray cats. They're just kind of laying there with the long hair, sun shining on them, dogs, laying around, graffiti everywhere. And I was like, this is where I'm going to get the Russians in because they're not checking any passports in this Free State place. That's a literal place there. Elaine was like, don't take pictures. They may get in trouble. And I was like, look at this. And you always see some other, all these people are just grody, laying around just, ugh. And then you'll see somebody that's dressed nicely, and I'm like, there's another tourist. They're all coming to the zoo. So that one we had in views, and it wasn't until we got to Sweden that I found something. There was two things that I never would have known. The first one was we're in Gamla, which is the old town. It's a really cool place. It's obviously built before vehicles, so it's all walking. It's cobblestone streets and everything like that. And we did our research, and we went to going to get dinner, and Elaine sees a sign that said, hey, look, they're doing karaoke. And Elaine says, well, let's go do some karaoke. I said, karaoke in Sweden? Are you serious? How's this going to work? So, but she's bound and determined. I'm doing karaoke. I'm going to go see if they got some Bonnie Raitt, see if these guys can play it. So we go down, and the inside the cavern was so old, it was like something from Pirates of the Caribbean. It was just really cool. So I just started taking pictures. And I said, I'm going to use this in the book. Somehow I'm going to use this. And that made the book, but I never would have known it unless my wife wanted to do karaoke. The other thing that I did want to do, so Grow Your Recovery Service is it's a cover organization that Pike Logan belongs to. They facilitate archaeological work. This is in the book, fiction. They facilitate archaeological work because most of the archaeological stuff that hasn't been, evacuated from the ground or whatever is in ungoverned spaces. And what else is in ungoverned spaces? It's a bunch of bad guys. So that was the cover I devised for Pike to use. So every time I go to one of these countries, I'm looking for something that I can plausibly use for Pike to do his mission. And I found the rune stones, which Sweden's very proud of their rune stones. So I said, we're going to do a tour of the rune stones. The rune stones, we'll see the rune stones, and that'll be why Pike's there. He's been invited by UNESCO, UN, university, whatever, to go in and look at these rune stones and help them out. And so the first thing we got, we're doing the rune stone tour. They said, we don't have anybody who speaks English for this. And I said, well, that's not going to work. And I said, we'll just have to postpone it and do it some other time. And they said, they called back 5 minutes later and said, no, we've got somebody who speaks English. They're on the way. So, well, you taught them English in 5 minutes? And then they kind of said, yeah, they did, but it turned out, no, they didn't. They couldn't speak English. So we start leaving, and she can form words, but she doesn't know what they mean. And so we're driving off, and the first thing that happened, the driver speaks more English than the guide does. And so we're going by these apartments that look like they'd been built in the 80s or 90s. And over to the right, you see architecture from the 17th century. And the driver goes, and we're in the back, we could see all that. It's like, yeah, those things were built in the 80s. I'm not sure she knows what century means. Well, we went to see the runestone, which you drive forever, 3 hours to this, and you get into some farmer's field, and you trot up the top, pushing the cows out of the way, and there's this runestone. It looks like a giant tombstone, basically, and that's it. I mean, that's all it is. She talks about it for 30 minutes, and I'm like, that's it? That's the runestone. And I was like, there's no way I can use this in the book. Nobody would believe that they would contract Pike's company to come see these, one tombstone. And so we see other runestones, but you drive for an hour, and sure enough, same thing, a little runestone out there in the middle of nowhere. Drive some more. And they said, we're going to go see where the Council of Elders, the Viking Council of Elders used to meet. So when they had any issues for marriages, for divorces, or you stole somebody's cow, whatever they were, this Council of Elders would help you out. And that's where they made the decisions. I'm like, finally, we're going to go see some kind of Stonehenge thing. This is it. Okay, maybe I can use this. So we, once again, go over hill and dale, go through the woods, go down to the lake. On the shore of this lake was really pretty. Trails going through the woods, and there's this ring of rocks in a circle and a fire pit in the center. And she says, this is it. And I said, the Girl Scouts did this. There's no way this has been here since the 13th century. You guys just put a bunch of rocks in a circle, and you're telling me this is where they did it. You had no proof of this. So I ended up using it. I made sure the task force, which is their overarching headquarters, they came up with the cover. So now Pike's just bitching about it the whole time has to use it. So it looks ridiculous in the book because it was ridiculous, but I couldn't find anything else. So he used it. So I'm running out of time. We got to Finland, and as we went in, Finland was really modern. There's a lot of modern stuff there. And I saw as we were coming in, We were on a ferry. There was old forts on an island. And I actually do like looking at old stuff, so I said, we're going to go take a look at that. Maybe I can use it in the book. So we did, and I quickly determined I couldn't, just because the only way to get there is by ferry, and the logistics of that, trying to time with bad guys, good guys, and all that. I was like, this isn't going to work. But we still did the tour. And we go all the way around, see everything. And this fort has been here since like the 13th century, but it's been built up over and over and over again. So it goes from the 13th century all the way to like 1970. It was still an active military fort. So it's got stuff from ancient time to modern time. And there are people who live there still. To this day, they live there. Not for tourism. That's just where they live. Generations have lived there, and they still do. And so we walked around everywhere, looked at everything. And we're done. The guy's showing us on this 3D model for the tourists. Here's where we were. We stopped here. We stopped here. We stopped here. And this is where the secret tunnel is. And I went, whoop. Secret tunnel? What are you talking about? He says, yeah, there's a tunnel, a secret tunnel we dug from here underneath the ocean into Finland. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Where is it? And now he thinks he's giving me, nuclear codes. Oh, I'm not supposed to talk about it. I'm like, just point out where it is on that map. I'll find it. And it turns out they did dig a tunnel. It's big enough for a car because the people who live there want, they want cable TV, they want internet, and they want power and all that kind of stuff. And they wanted anytime anybody had a heart attack or anything, the only way to get them to a hospital was on a boat. It took forever. Now they can call an ambulance and come through the tunnel. Well, he wouldn't give me any information about the tunnel, but I said, that thing's going in a damn book. I'm going to figure this out. So I go back, do some Google research, and I found the company that built the tunnel. And he says, nobody's supposed to know about this. Well, on their webpage, here's the start of the tunnel. Inside the tunnel. Look what we did inside this tunnel. Where it comes out in Finland. Comes out right here. That's this tunnel. So, it had everything. And I ended up using it. So I did all the research, went to Estonia. I won't bore you with that because I think I'm going over time now. And we ended up doing, I had to come home and write the book. So done all the fun stuff, and it's time to write the book. And Lane says I have a 12-step writing process, which when I first start writing is we're doomed. I got nothing. None of this is going to work. And then about, I get to step 4, which is I hate this damn book. Nothing of this is working. It's just horrible. Go all the way through to about step 10, which is my book's due. I don't care how bad it is. Get it out. And then I get to book 12. Before I go on tour, because I'm already working on book 19 right now. This is book 18. I'll reread the book. And I'll go, damn, that's pretty good. Did I write that? Wow, that's a pretty good book. And Elaine always says, step 12. You made it through the process. With that, I'll open it up to questions, if you had any. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Brad, being interested in your comments on the current events in the Middle East.
Yeah.
My thought that our government is currently more interested in appeasing, not offending Iran than we are in deterring them.
Well,
Second corollary, if I could ask, I'd like to get your take on next January's college football national championship game.
It'll be Texas.
Between the University of Texas and
Yes.
Ohio State.
Right. It won't be Alabama. My daughter goes to Alabama, and I was like, here goes Saban. You're doomed. You guys aren't even going to make the playoffs for the first time in 30 years. As far as the Middle East, I think that what aggravates me the most are the news sound bites. Everybody's got a sound bite on the news, and like that's going to solve anything. We have short memories, because if you remember, we did kill Soleimani. And you'll hear people saying on TV right now, we had strength back then. We killed Soleimani, and they didn't do anything. Well, they didn't do anything unless you count the 26 ballistic missiles they shot from Iran into al-Assad and injured 34 people. Or unless you count the fact that they blew one of our drones out of the air in international airspace. We didn't react to any of that. But that was prudent. Now he's a coward. There's no easy solution for this. People that are saying we should be nuking Tehran, really? The Houthis are doing what they're doing because they want to get power. And they're in a civil war. All this stuff is interconnected, but the Houthis are in civil war. They need the population on their side. They see that the population are incensed about Gaza. They say, I'm going to get the population on my side. I'm going to shoot some Israeli ships. Now the population says, that's cool. Way to hit those ships. And they're like, ooh, this is working out. So it's not necessarily because Iran's telling them to do it. It's because the Houthis have their own goals they're trying to achieve, and this is getting it for them. And people are saying we should blow the Houthis up, I wish we could blow the Houthis up too. But they've been bombed for the last 10 years. I mean, they've survived it all. They had a first world power. We were helping Saudi Arabia bomb them for 10 years, and they're still there, and they still have the missiles. It's easy to get on TV and say, if I was in charge, I'd kill all the Houthis, and that'd be it. Then you get in charge and you say, what do you mean we can't kill them all? Well, we've been trying to kill them for 10 years. I mean, it's a complex problem set. The reason we do all the strikes in Syria, for example, is because Syria's a mess. We can kill anybody we want to in Syria. In Iraq, we're invited by the government to come in. So as soon as you blow somebody up in Iraq, could you imagine the outrage if we had a military base here from, German base here, and they decided to blow somebody up because they got mad at them? We'd say, get the hell out of here. Well, that's what Iraq's doing right now. They're saying, get the hell out of here. We don't want you anymore. Well, that's exactly what Iran wants. They want us out of Iraq. They want us out of the whole Middle East, but they definitely want us out of Iraq. Iraq is right now, the only thing they don't have is a land bridge from Iran through Iraq into Syria to fund Hezbollah. They have to fly everything in, which is why every time you see an Israeli strike, they're hitting an airport. They're hitting the stuff that they're flying in. If they start taking it across the land, we'll never find it. It'll be dispersed everywhere else. And Iran wants us to leave Iraq. They've seen our history. If we hit them hard enough a few times, the people in America will say, we're sick of this. What are we doing over there? Let's get out. And they'll win. I mean, it's a much more complex problem set than the bumper stickers that come on TV. I could talk all day on this. So, yes, sir.
I'd like you to go back a little bit more to the book and tell us about the timeline and how you prepared yourself. I understand the research you did and the complication and 12-step process. But I actually want to understand what would be the timeline? 2.5 years, 3 years, 6 months, a week? I don't know.
Time limit to write it? Yeah. So it takes about a year to do it. When you say write it, most people, when they say how long does it take to write a book, what they really mean is how long does it take to type? How long does it take to type something on the page? But there's much more. In my mind, I'm always writing. I don't type every day, but I'm always writing. I have a journal I carry around with me everywhere I go, and I jot down notes, and then eventually I'll start writing. I tried doing 1,000 words a day, and that didn't work out because I'm just cramming stuff that I'm not ready to write yet, or type, I should say. But I'll tell you that as far as the process itself, I have a saying that I live by, which is if you wait to the last minute, it only takes a minute. And that's what my wife will say I do. So she'll say, what are you doing laying on the couch? You got a book due. And I tell her, just like I'm telling you, I'm writing. Don't disturb me. But it does take about a year with all of it together. Now, for the timeline for this specific book, because it was a current event, I did pick a specific point in time. I said, I'm just going to start here, which was when there was an errant missile strike that hit Poland, and everybody was freaking out because Poland's a NATO nation. For good reason. I mean, I was kind of freaking out too. Russia just blew up Poland? Oh, here we go. And it turned out to be a Ukrainian missile that went awry. So I picked that date. That's how I'm going to start it, right there. And I wrote from there.
The research that you did was months in advance.
Yeah, well, kind of overlapped it, but you're right. Yes, when I had the idea before that, it actually occurred. And to be honest with you, I was kind of procrastinating because I was I was waiting to see what's going on in Ukraine. Something's going to happen in Ukraine. There's going to be something big happening in Ukraine, and I don't want to write before that. And I was wasting time. I mean, it was about 4 weeks, and I was like, nothing happened. And then the missile struck hit, and I said, okay, that's going to be the something. I got to start writing. And yes, ma'am.
With your military background, do you have to have points in your book approved by the government or others?
No. Nobody, and I tell everybody this, nobody wants to listen to me. It's case law. So everybody has their own pre-publication review process. The CIA has theirs. The FBI has theirs. State Department has theirs. The Department of Defense has theirs. And I've read through it all. I know exactly what that thing says. And it's basically, if I write about anything that I have knowledge of, non-fiction-wise, if I was arrogant enough to write my bio, or biography, I would have to get it cleared. If I was going to write about operations in Syria, even though I have not fought in Syria, I know enough about special operations that I could definitely tell you what's going on in Syria. That has to be cleared. Fiction does not have to be cleared, according to Department of Defense. And there's a good reason for that, because I was in a bunch of classified units. Where do you draw the line on what you're clearing? So say I wrote a police procedural for a detective in New York. Brad used to be in the Delta Force. That should be cleared. Why? I'm writing about a cop. Well, say the cop used to be special forces. Now does it have to be cleared? Say I'm writing about a science fiction in the year 4040, but I'm writing about special operations in the year 4040. Does that have to be cleared? There's just no way you could figure out what does this have to be cleared. For instance, I could write about the SEALs. I've never been in the Navy. Why does that have to be cleared? So they just have never, you don't have to do fiction, which is why, like when I was in college, I used to read a ton of books on MACSOG, which was a classified organization during the Vietnam War. They were all written as fiction because they didn't have to be cleared. But everybody starts sending their books into the DOD. They're getting them cleared, and I'm like, don't do it, don't do it. They're going to redact everything but the word "the" because they don't care. I mean, they don't care if you get it published or not. They just redact everything. And everybody keeps sending them in, and it's making case law. It's like, how come everybody keeps sending us these books, but that guy never does? Maybe we should talk to him. I had a guy contact me because, like I say, CIA's got their own publication review process. He was a CIA case officer, but he also served in a special mission unit in the military before he went over to the CIA. And he's getting his book reviewed by the CIA because it's a CIA story type thing, and it's fiction. The CIA, they have a standing rule. If you write a gardening book, we're going to clear that damn thing. I mean, it doesn't matter what you write, it's getting cleared. That's just their rule. That's what they made. And he emailed me and said, look, I used to serve in a special mission unit. Do you think I need to send the book to DOD? And I said, you got on the pre-pub for CIA, right? He said, yeah. I said, hell no. No way in hell would I send it to DOD. They'll just start redacting everything. Let the CIA clear it. If the CIA gives you a blessing, just because you served in that organization doesn't mean they get a right to read it. And that's what he did. Other people keep sending them in. I'm like, all right, you're going to get redacted and get me in trouble. Yes, sir.
What's your inspiration, or who was your inspiration for Pike Logan?
He's basically an amalgamation of people I've served with. He's not any one individual. He's just a bunch of people. I get asked all the time, are you Pike Logan? And I'm like, no, I'm not Pike Logan. I've served with a lot of Pike Logans, but I usually say it's kind of like the PGA Tour. There's probably 1% of the world that can play on the PGA Tour. Out of everybody on the earth, there's probably 1% that are good enough to play on the PGA Tour. And there's Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. That's Pike Logan. There's somebody who's 100th on the money list nobody's ever heard of. He's on the tour, but he's 100th on the money list, and that's me. So, I mean, I'm playing on the PGA Tour, but I'm not Tiger Woods, and that's what Pike Logan is. And I've met a lot of them, too. I've served with them. Yes, sir.
Travel under your own name?
Yeah. I've never actually worried about that. I probably should. I did get, and luckily, this was a close friend thing. I got arrested in Lesotho, Africa as an American spy because I was trying to find out where the Lesotho Special Forces, or LDF, the Lesotho Defense Force Special Operations were. Went right up to the gate, showed them my ID, said, I'm ex-military, I love seeing military bases, can I get on? They said, get out of here. So I left and went around to the other side and found a guy who was patrolling the gate, or the fence line, started talking to him, he spoke English. Next thing I do, all these black sedans pulled up and they threw me in the back, hauled me on, I got to see the base. They drove me right on that damn thing. And I was held for about 8 hours. And I learned a lot about Lesotho that I didn't know. There was a lot of fighting going on between, what had happened 2 days before I landed was that the LDF general who was in charge of everything had been there forever, and he was very powerful, and the prime minister thought he was getting too powerful, so he said, you need to step down. And he said, I'm not stepping down, you can't make me. And they said, okay, fine, well, this guy's going to be in charge of the LDF, and you can still be a general. Well, they found a new guy underneath the bridge with a bullet in his head. Then America came in and said, you guys need to get out of here. We started flexing our muscle. He stepped down 2 days before I landed. So they had no love for America. I didn't know any of this. And I'm walking up with military ID. Hey, look, I'm American. And they rolled me up. But I was petrified, to back to your point. If they Google my name and see that bio she just read, I'm in big trouble. I'm never getting out of here. I had actually texted my wife. I could only talk to her over Wi-Fi. My cell phone didn't function, which was a point in my favor. I said, who would send a spy here with a cell phone that doesn't work in your country? What was not in my favor was I could talk to her over Wi-Fi through iMessage, and just jokingly, I said, I found the secret base. I'm going to it tomorrow. And that was on my phone. I was like, oh, my God. So I had a bunch of pictures that were not your traditional tourist pictures because the book was about a coup, so I had pictures of the police station, the television station, the radio station. I had a picture of the prime minister's house in a moving vehicle that in the picture is a sign saying no photos. And it's on my phone, on my camera. And I had hid the camera when they pulled it over. They found the camera and went through it all. I was like, I'm in big trouble. And they said I was using resistance techniques you get taught. And they said, you've been trained? I'm like, yeah. Like, you want me to fake it? When we start crying, I'll do that. Can I get out of here? And I said, told them, I'm very thirsty. I can't think straight. I'm very thirsty. And so the guy picked up a water bottle that was on a table, went out back, came back in. It was empty when he left. Now it was full. I'm like, where'd that come from? And he said, just to show you it's not poison. And he drinks it and gives it to me. And I'm like, I ain't thirsty anymore. I don't want that water. So eventually it was released, but it was kind of harrowing. And I thought if they Google my name, I'm in big trouble. They didn't, though. They weren't that good. Yeah, Mark.
So with the situation with Russia and Ukraine, is that going to unveil the maybe lack of fierceness of Russia?
Oh, yeah.
And that they're not this big, bad, ugly.
Yeah. They still have nuclear weapons. That's their big, thing. But yeah, it definitely did. It surprised me. It surprised everybody. I was writing, articles about, and it still holds true today. I said, look, mass has a characteristic all its own. You've got 10-1, you're going to win. And they came really close to winning. There was a airfield right outside of Kiev, and if they'd have seized that, they would have taken it. It would have been the 3-day thing they wanted. And a bunch of guys in tracksuits with bolt-action rifles beat them off, and they couldn't seize the airfield. And that's when you saw the 40-mile convoy that was trying to come in, and then things just started going sideways. They were really good for 3 days, and after 3 days, it all just started falling apart. They didn't have the command and control. None of their people, their conscripts, were trained on any kind of leadership skills. As soon as they lost their first leader, the next guy who stepped up was not trained to be a leader. It turned out to be quite a hollow force, which is the whole reason Wagner was thrown in there, because at least those guys were getting trained. But it really did. It shocked a lot of people. Everybody in the military was just like, oh, it's over. And then, a month later, like, you got to be kidding me. Give that guy some ammo. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
How do you see it playing out?
Pessimistically, I think it's going to, because of we have all our divisions. I hear people talking about, I don't want to give blood and treasure to Ukraine. We're not giving blood. That's the whole point. We're not sending any soldiers over there. And as far as treasure goes, it's a damn rounding error in the Pentagon budget. You can't say out of one mouth, we need a stronger military, and out of the other side of your mouth saying that's expensive. I think that we're going to end up not supporting them. And mass is a quality all its own. In the Korean War, we had better weapons, better everything, and they'd send 10,000 Chinese against 2,000 defenders. Eventually, you run out of bullets. Doesn't matter how good you fight, you're going to lose. And that's what's going to happen in Ukraine. They're running out of people. They still need the weapon systems. And if they don't have the weapon systems, they can't compete materially with Russia. Russia has industrial base and they have the manpower. Even if they're untrained manpower, if I send 10 guys against you and you're Pike Logan, those 10 guys are probably going to take out Pike Logan. There's not a whole lot. Mass works. And I think that's probably pessimistically what will happen. I think optimistically, there are a lot of things happening in Russia. There's people that don't. Right now, there's a guy running for presidency on an anti-war message. He's saying, I want to pull out of Ukraine. Of course, he's not going to win. But by the very fact that he thinks he's got enough support to even get on the ballot, it's kind of impressive. So they're optimistically, they could still get him. I don't think they'll ever get, I think they can get Crimean Peninsula back. I don't think the Luhansk and the oblasts in the east, those are probably going to get carved out. Because right now, Russia is doing a invasion of the body snatchers in Ukraine, where they're turning everything over in every town into Russian. They've taken all the kids, they're getting indoctrinated into Russian, schools. They're changing the monetary system over to Russia. The cell system is going to be Russian. All the people that are in the municipalities are all Russian. Eventually, the people won't remember. And the easiest way to get rid of a culture is don't let them speak the language. Everybody's required to speak Russian. And that slowly but surely, the longer this goes on, it makes it harder and harder and harder to pull that back to Ukraine. I hope I'm wrong, but pessimistically.
What system do they have in place to analyze research? Find resources.
You're talking about the Russians or Ukraine? Ukraine's actually done a lot better than Russia has, because desperation breeds, if you're not working, get out of here. Russia has mass on this side of the house they had their old systems built on the Cold War, just like we did. You know, everybody, and the logistics systems and all that were old school logistics stuff. They have a lot of new equipment, but they haven't trained on how to integrate new communications and things like that. They have both ramped up incredibly fast. Everybody in the world is looking at it. Like the drones that are being flying around with explosives on them that you buy off the shelf. All that's changed the face of warfare, because it takes, for every time they find a way to evade our ability to shoot the drone down, it costs them like $5, and then we spend $200,000 on a new way to do it. So you've got this $20,000 drone flying around, and we're using $2 million missiles to get rid of it. And that has really caused almost a revolution, sea change in warfare on how that's working. It's almost like the invention of the percussion rifle, rifled barrels, that kind of thing. It's a sea change in how they're going to do this. So Russia was still using all the old systems of, I'm going to use artillery, and I'm going to use airplanes, I'm going to use all this other stuff. And Ukraine, because they didn't have any of that stuff, said, I'm going to put this grenade on the bottom of this drone and see what it does. And boom, they started killing people. And the next thing you know, they got a whole drone factory. They're buying DJI drones from China, refitting them, putting weapon systems on them, and launching them. They got whole drone battalions. They've really done well at it.
How does that affect the economy?
The Ukrainian economy? I don't understand how those, now you're stepping away from my expertise, because I'm not really sure. I don't understand how they still function as an economy. They still do. People are still shopping and still, buying bread and everything, but that's above my knowledge base of how they're doing that. Yes, sir.
On that, is there a general that you follow with their commentary on?
I didn't hear your question.
Is there like a general, like retired general or retired admiral? I know you were like,
Yeah.
that you follow with respect and like.
Yeah, there's a few of them. I mean, I do, most of my research is reading. There's a bunch of people that are in Russia writing about things. And the Middle East, same way. There's AI Monitor. You can Google them. They have writers from all over the Middle East if you want to understand Hezbollah, Israel, and all that. There's some of them are Arabic, some of them are Israeli, those kind of things. There's not any, like Admiral McRaven's a friend of mine. I could talk to him all day. But most of the people that I really respect are not going on TV and talking. So I talk to them privately. Most of the people I see on TV, I like General Keane. He's pretty good. But most everybody else, they've got some kind of agenda they're throwing out there. It doesn't matter, they would change their tune 100%. If the administration was different, the exact same action occurred, it would be genius. Now it's this administration, cowardly dumbass. So I don't do politics. I don't, especially in national security. I think it should end at the water's edge. I've written 18 books. I've had presidential administrations in every one of them. I never even said what party the guy belongs to, because I don't like reading about politics when I read fiction. You start feeding, if it's from the left or the right, you start feeding me all this political stuff, the end of that book. And I'm a reader first, so if I don't like reading it, I don't want to put it in my book. I'm off the subject. So basically everybody gets on TV's got something. And that's on both sides. Somebody gets on MSNBC, I'm like, here we go. Biden's going to be the biggest genius in the whole world. They all have some kind of agenda they're trying to throw out there. Yes, ma'am.
What country did you go to that you didn't like at all, that you made one of your books on?
Lesotho. No. No, Lesotho is actually, I did enjoy Lesotho. She's telling me we have time for one more question. I'll answer this one. Is that what that meant? Okay. I don't know. What would you say that you didn't like? No, I'll be honest with you. I did a lot of research in Mexico City for the Polaris Protocol, and I wouldn't go back there. It's not safe, and it was kind of nasty, and just wasn't very pleasant. I can't think of anybody. Yeah. What's that? Oh, yeah. Well, we went down to Brazil, and not the whole country. A lot of spots of the country were good, but Manaus itself was right there at the heart of the Amazon, and it's just, yeah, the Amazon was great. But the city itself was industrialized and things like that. They played it up to be some kind of big art place, and it ended up being just an industrialized, whole. Yes, sir. Oh. Go ahead.
Every task force operator has a call.
Yes.
Every call sign has a story.
Yes.
How did you come up with the stories to fight these?
So you're asking because you really know?
No, I'm curious. I keep thinking of your
Yeah, they actually came from. They're in the books. So, what's that? So, do you remember Enemy of Mine? So, Enemy of Mine, Pike gets his pinky cut off, and there used to be mercurochrome. You guys probably remember mercurochrome. It's called monkey's blood. People used to call it monkey's blood. My mom used to call it monkey's blood. Put a little monkey blood on that, and you'll be okay. And Brett made a joke. He's not in the task force yet. He was working with the CIA at the time. And he makes a joke about, Pike's lost his finger. And he says, put some monkey blood on that and you'll be better. And so Knuckles gave him the call sign Blood, which he hates because the double entendre of that is Brett's African American. And he thinks it makes him look like it's some kind of gang member, but really it's an inside joke because he said monkey's blood. That's where that one came from. So, well, that sentence came. You guys never call it monkey's blood? In Texas, it's all called monkey's blood. Everybody in Texas called it monkey's blood. All right, one more.
How many more books does Pike have in?
Oh, I don't know. Somebody asked me that on the radio yesterday. I was in an interview, and I said I couldn't possibly predict that. One day I may wake up and say I got nothing left. That's it. But as long as I still have something to write, I'll keep writing. I don't have a plan. There's nothing in my head saying, I'm going to do X number. In fact, I was just doing an interview yesterday, and they said, book number 20, that's the big one. You got to come up with a big bang. I'm like, I'm barely getting through book 19, man. Come on. All right, I'm going to let him answer because he's had his hand up twice.
Any chance that Pike Logan was done with his season?
Oh, let's not ask that question. Not at this stage. The Hollywood's just really hard to figure out, and usually it's you're either very lucky, you fall into something that you just happen to be sitting next to somebody on an airplane, you got to talk, and next thing you know, he wants to make a movie. I've had a lot of feelers, but I've been more of a coward than I probably should have been. I've turned them down more than they've turned me down. But it just takes forever. It just goes on and on and on. I had one guy, I was convinced, okay, this is it. Me Too hit. Turned out he'd been running around sexually assaulting everybody. He was out of Hollywood. There goes my deal. So it just comes and goes. And if it happens, I don't really worry about it now. If it happens, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great too, because I read books. Just to give you an example, Mark Green is a good friend of mine. The Gray Man just came out with Ryan Reynolds. That was optioned in 2009. That's how long it's been, before it ever got anywhere. What's that? Yeah, he's got no control over that. That's the other thing. They changed it all up, and everybody sent me hate mail.